Cool. So, yeah, my name is Alex, and I'm going to be doing Git and GitHub today. We're going to do a lot of kind of live coding and stuff. So hopefully you have Git installed on your computer. And because I'm doing a lot of live stuff, I brought a friend of mine who's really good at GitHub too. His name's Edward. He's over here, and he's going to be walking around. Yeah, clap for him too. Just keep clapping the whole time. So if you guys have general questions about, hey, like I can't get this to install, it's not really working right, he's going to be walking around. If you have general questions about Git and GitHub, I'm happy to stop throughout the whole thing. So feel free to interrupt me at any time. So how many of you guys have actually heard of Git and or GitHub before? A lot of you. Awesome. How many of you guys have actually used it? Yeah, cool. Awesome. So look to them if you guys can't figure it out too. It'd be awesome. Yeah, so I guess let's just get started. So what is Git exactly? So it's a command line interface tool for version control. Is that noise? For version control. And version control basically means that you have many versions of one code base or of one document, but you don't have, say, 100 copies of that document saved. So for example, Google Docs, you might have document A, and then you update it and you upload document B, and then document C, D, E, and then you have a bunch of copies of that. But Git is not like that. You have pieces in history that you can go back to. So instead of having 100 documents, you have one document that has many versions. Yeah. So why is it necessary? I mean, to keep versions of things, if you screw something up on maybe your database or you screw something up in your code, you have a history of what it looked like before it was broken, right? And it's everywhere. It's not just in coding. Today I'm going to be talking a lot about it with software engineering, but generally it's not used for only that. You can use it for legal documents, for photos, for pretty much anything that needs version controlling. So I was going to jump, right into some code and see what we can do. So the first thing I'm going to do is, so do you all have Git installed already? Yeah, so if you can check that by doing Git version. So it tells me what my version is, and it's installed and good to go. So you guys have GitHub accounts, and you have Git installed. So a couple things that we want to do so that we can marry the two is we want to do some configurations. So we want to tell Git, which is a command line tool, we want to tell it what our username is. So let's do this. Git global. So that's my username. So when we go to talk with GitHub from Git, they're going to ask us what our username is, what our email is. So we're just going to configure that forever. So it's just there. So, I forgot to type config. Okay, so Git's just going to return silently. There's nothing wrong. It's happy. Let's also do a git config -- global, and let's tell it our email. Cool. So now it should be configured, some basic kind of stuff. So let's create a Git repository. We're going to create a folder that is using Git. So what we'll do is we'll say git init, and we'll call it Git practice. So we've initialized the empty Git repository, meaning that it has Git installed in it, so we can use it. So let's go into that Git practice folder. So now we can use this version control that I was talking about. So let's, using your favorite text editor or whatever you want, I'm going to use Vim. Let's create a README. Okay, and we're going to insert something. We'll do like a H3. So this is Markdown, if you guys don't know. It's a nice little tool. So we're going to say teaching my first GitHub class. And we're going to save that. So now, if we do a git status, Git's going to tell us is to say, so there's this thing called a README, that you have, but I'm not keeping track of it. I don't really know what it is. It's just sort of existing, so it's untracked, right? So what we want to do is we want to tell Git to keep track of this. So if I make changes to this, look at it. So we are going to do what's called a git add. So we're going to git add the readme.md. And what that's going to do is that's going to add it to what's called the staging environment, which is sort of like, hey Git, I made a bunch of changes to this stuff. Like, keep that in mind, basically. So we do that, and then we can use this command called git status. Sorry, we already did that. But if we redo git status, it's saying, oh, hey, so there's this new file called readme that you want me to look at. Okay, cool. So we're keeping track of that. So the next step is now we went from untracked to staging, and now what we want to do is we want to commit it to history. We like the changes we made. We want it to be a piece of history. So what we're going to do is we're going to commit it to history. So I added a header to my README file. So I think it's worth mentioning that this commit message, so this is really important to have a verbose commit message and say exactly what you're doing, because you want to be very transparent with the other people you're working with. So someone's going to look through your code base and they're going to say, what was this commit? Oh, he added a header to the README file. Okay. If I were to do something like, did stuff, like that's just absolutely useless to me. I have no idea what's happening. So we're going to say added header to the README. Yes?
So each time that you accomplish a new task, you would update the static version to get save what you typed from that one. So each time you get a working version, you say, I added this, and then you go back to the...
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, you say you go out to do something. You want to maybe make the about page for your web page. And you do all this work, and then you're going to commit it. And yeah, so what you said pretty much hit it on the head. So does that all make sense, everyone? This idea of having it untracked and then in staging and then being put into history? Yeah, no questions so far? Okay, cool. So now that we've committed to history, if we look at our git status again, it's like there's nothing there. You've committed to history. But let's go ahead and change that file again. And let's maybe add another thing. So you guys are awesome. So I'm going to add that. So if I look at my git status again, it's going to say, okay, you modified this thing that I already know about. It's telling me keep that in mind. I see this change. If you want to add it, you can go ahead and add it. So here's another really awesome command that you can do, really useful. It's called git diff. And what that's going to do is it's going to show me exactly the difference between the last commit and my current changes. So we can see that this green plus sign basically means that it was an addition. So I added this line to the file. Okay, so let's git add the README again. Let's commit it. Added sub header to README. So now we've committed it all. Now we have this local repository, and that's all nice, but we want to hook it up with GitHub. We want other people to be able to contribute to our code, to look at our code. So what we need to do is we need to now go to GitHub and create a repository and connect the two. So I don't know, is that big enough? Should I zoom in a little? No? Good? Okay, I'll just zoom in case. So let's create a new repository. And just for sanity and everything, we're going to name it exactly the same as our local one. So now we're on GitHub. So yeah, let me make that clear. Over here, all these commands and stuff, that's Git. the command line interface. That's Git. And then here is GitHub, which is a graphical user interface on top of Git. So we'll get more into that. So we're creating this repository. Now we have this repository called Git practice. Now, if we didn't create a repository already in our local machine, we would go through this, right? We would say git init and git add and commit, but we've already done all that and we have our repository. So all we really want to do is we want to tell our local repository and we want to tell GitHub that these two things are connected, that these two things should be able to talk to each other. So what we're going to do is, I'm just going to take that because we're going to need it. We're going to do a git add remote. So what that's saying is we're going to add a new phone number, basically. We're going to add a new way for our local repository to talk to some other thing online. And in this case, it's GitHub. So we're going to add that remote. So that remote is just github.com/my username / the name that I gave it, .git. I guess it's git remote add, excuse me. Oh, sorry. So git remote, here we go. I forgot about one piece. So that phone number I was talking about, the way to communicate, that's called origin. So we say git remote add some name. In our case, we're just going to name it origin. And then we're going to add this, the phone number, basically. So now we have this. So now if we say, what are my remotes? I have this thing called origin, right? So these two things are connected. Okay, so now I'm going to introduce a new command. Is everyone comfortable with the Git commands I've done so far? Understand what a remote is, sort of, the connection between the two? Questions? Okay, so what we're going to do is, remember all those commits we did? So those are there, but they're not on Git. They're not on GitHub. So what we want to do is we want to do this thing called git push. And that's exactly what you think it is. We're taking all this code and we're pushing it up to the remote. So git push, and then we're going to give it the phone number, origin, git push origin, master. So origin represents the phone number, and master then represents what's called a branch, which I'm going to get into in just a second. So now it's saying, okay, I'm going to add all this. I'm going to add all this stuff, and I'm going to create this new branch on my local thing called, or on my remote called master. And then when we refresh this page, all of the things that we've done are now there. It's on GitHub now. It exists. It's alive. So I think I want to talk about this idea of a branch. So a branch is, you have this, like, I guess, a branch that represents your code, right? So you have the master branch. And generally, the master branch represents production-ready code. So code that's good to go, that is ready to be online. So GitHub, specifically, they have a very nice workflow, which I would get into, but I don't know if we're going to have time for that. But anything that's on master, once they push to master, that's online. So this website right here is their master branch, right? So you might think, are there any other kinds of branches? Yes. You can create a branch off of the master branch. So you create a new branch that represents maybe a new feature or a bug fix. And the reason is that you don't want to do that directly in master, because if you screw something up, you screw up the entire code base. So you want to separate that out into a new branch. That's a little more advanced, but let's just stick with this for now. So now I want to teach you guys, actually, how much time do I have? It's only 15 minutes. Okay, so now we've connected these two things. Now I'd like to teach you about pull requests. So what that means is, say there's an open source project, right? like Rails. How many of you guys know what Ruby on Rails is? Yeah, so Rails is an open source project, meaning this is it right here. This is the source code for Rails. You can go on it, you can download it, and this is it. Like millions and millions, like tons of people use this, and it's just here, it exists. And you, as developers, can contribute to this. You can contribute to this open source, and you can change how Rails is done, maybe. And the way that you do that is through pull requests, which is basically some code that you've written, and you are requesting to add it to their code base, right? So I want to go through that just a bit. So let's go into this. It'd be cool if you guys actually went to this URL and followed along. So can you guys read that? It's github.com/xander/git-practice. So what we can do is you guys all go into this README that I've created, and you can then edit it, right? And you can say, you can add something, whatever you want. Let's say, hey, this is going to be a pull request. And then I can do this. So it's a little more advanced to create a branch and then commit to that branch and then do a pull request. But GitHub allows you to do that basically with one click. If you guys want to get more into the details of that, I'd really like to teach like a more advanced class. But for now, we're just going to abstract all of that, and we're going to create a pull request like this. So right here it's saying propose this file change. So I'm going to propose a file change. And then I'm going to create that pull request. Now, if I go back to the repository's homepage, like look at that, I already got one. Awesome. So someone sent me a pull request. That wasn't me. So let's go, and we can see, okay, here's a conversation we're having. So I can like go in and, you know, put some like comment on it. I can like put a dog GIF. I can like say like thumbs up, and that's really cool because we can do, oh man, that's laggy. But we can do, you know, emojis, which is really cool, like directly in GitHub. So you do +1, which, you know, everyone loves emojis. I can comment on that. I can put puppies in there, and then I can look at my commits, and I can say, okay, so what did he actually do? What were the, so remember when we were doing all those commits? Like, let's look at those. Like, what were they? Okay, he did this one commit, and he likes tacos, and I really like that. So I could even comment not just on the pull request, but I could comment on exactly each commit that he did, right? So maybe this means you've committed to some open source repository, and your code style is different than their code style, or maybe you forgot to write a test for something. So they could, like, I could respond and just say, you know, or I could use this @ symbol. And I can say, hey, Connor JP, you love tacos. So I can just like respond to that, cool, and that will actually ping him and say, hey, you got a response. And then we can look at the actual files change, and the really cool thing about the difference between Git and GitHub is that GitHub allows you to see these like very pretty, very nicely, and it's just really easy to use. So let's go back to that pull request. My God, I have 6. Awesome. So let's go back to this one and look at the dog again. And I like this one. So I'm going to go ahead and merge it and confirm the merge. So now it's merged into my master branch, right? And look at that. I like tacos. It's right there. It's been changed. So we can keep going and like look at more pull requests and do all that stuff. Cool. Yeah, so I think I have like 10 minutes, so I want to kind of really quickly run through the idea of GitHub workflow. So when you're doing all of this, what it looks like in GitHub, and like how to, when you're contributing to open source repositories, sort of best practices that you want to do to make sure that people you know, respond to your code and you're not being a jerk, you're being a sir. So the idea is like this. You have this master branch, and then when we created that pull request, it creates a new branch. It sends a pull request, and then it merges it back into master. And that whole process happened, and we just saw it. It was just a little abstracted by GitHub. Yeah, so I'd like to go deeper into branches. I think they're pretty important. So you can think of a branch as a fork in the road in history. So you can see, I can't really point, but you see like that purple-y thing? So that line at the top, that horizontal line at the top, that represents master branch. And then that downward branch, that represents some new branch, that is some new feature. And see how it's not, it's coming off of master, so it represents master from that point, but then everything after that is different from master. And then you merge it back in when you're done. So that's the thing with a branch, is that it's a new feature, new bug request, or new bug fix that helps the master code. So yeah, I mentioned this, but it's really, really, really important for GitHub workflow is do feature work on a different branch. Everything on GitHub, on master, is deployable. So really keep that in mind. So in the GitHub community, this little squirrel, it's an emoji, and you can say, you do like : ship it, and that's what you say when you say this code is good to go, this code is good to merge into master. So you say like ship it, good to go. So then we add some commits. We talked about that. You add all these commits into what you want to do, basically chunks of code, like we talked about, within your new branch, right? And you really want to keep these messages very, very clear. So if you said fix errors in the previous commit, you have no idea what that means. Like, I have to go back and look at the previous commit, and then I don't know what you're doing. You need to be really clear about that. And again, yeah, that's great for working on teams. So then you open that pull request. So it's like, here's the code I want to request to change, right? So then we request to make this change, and it gets sent up to the GitHub gods, basically the maintainers of the repository, and they check it out, like I was doing on GitHub a second ago. So yeah, use the @mention symbol. I kind of went over this, but use it. Like, hey, this person, how does this part of my code look? So how many of you guys are interested in maybe contributing to open source sometime? Yeah, it's like really awesome. I wanted to go over how you do that, just so you guys just go into an open source repository and fix their README. Maybe there's a spelling error or something, but if you get in there and you start making changes and you start doing stuff, that builds up. You make a little change, then a bigger change, and then before you know it, you're actually contributing to this repository. So in order to do that, you need to fork the repository, which means that's a very GitHub-specific thing. It means make an exact copy of the repository, but under your account. So it's not the original repository. It's a repository under your control that is that repository. That might be a little bit confusing, but it's OK for now. So you need to fork it, and then because you don't have collaborator access. If you did have collaborator access, meaning someone went into the settings and said, yeah, this person is good, this person knows what they're doing, they can make changes. If you don't have that, you need to fork it in order to make these kind of changes. So yeah, fork versus branch. A fork, right, it's needed for, if you don't have collaborator access, branch if it is collaborator access. I know this is kind of high level, but if we go deeper, this will make a lot of sense and it'll be really useful. So another huge part I also touched on was you need to then discuss and review the code. So we've created a branch, we've added commits, we've sent the pull request. Now we need to talk about your code. Someone needs to review it and look at it and say, hey, this code looks really good, it's ready to be into master, or it's not good, make this change, fix it. And that's really huge with collaboration. It's all about social coding with GitHub. So that's, important. So yeah, emoji support, really cool. I actually really like that. So then after it's been discussed and it's good to go, we can then merge and deploy it. So we merge it back into the master branch and it's deployed. It's in production. You've contributed to, whatever, Rails or something like that. And the cool thing is that you can go back in history and look at the merges that you made. You can look at all the different stuff that's happened throughout history and go back to it even. So really cool. So remember I was talking about all these commit messages and stuff. So you can do awesome stuff like, say, created a landing page and it closes number 32. Okay, let me go into that. So 32 represents an issue, right? So let's go back into this and look at our issues. We don't have any issues, but we can create one. It's like we need a landing page. So now I've created this new issue, right? And it has the number 9. So if I were to commit to GitHub and I were to say closes number 9, it would then actually close that issue and it wouldn't exist anymore. So those issues basically are to do, things to do. Create a landing page, this and that. It's used by the open source community really widely. Yeah. And yeah, these are just some docs. I can give these slides to Rhonda and she can post them so you guys can look at these docs and I can give you some more resources too. So I don't know if any of you guys want to do this, but it'd be really cool if any of you guys really feel like you understand the general GitHub workflow and want to try to, repeat it back to me. Is anyone brave enough? I'm brave enough to come here and teach a class, and I'm an undergrad. Are you guys brave enough to, come on, someone? No. Oh, yeah? Stage, commit, push. Yeah, so that is for your local repository. So that's when you want to actually add a commit and update your GitHub repository. So yeah, that's right. But I'm talking about in terms of the GitHub workflow. So the flow I was talking about with branching and committing and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, we had this branch, then we committed, then we did a pull request, then we talked about the code, etc. But yeah, cool. So just a quick review. Master, create a new branch, do a pull request, then merge it back into master. I think I'm out of time, but here's my information. I like doing this. I want to do a more advanced class and go really deep into forking and branching and some of the cooler stuff in GitHub. So if any of you guys are interested, I'd really like you to email me or send me a message on GitHub or tweet at me or anything like that. I have stickers up here and some cheat sheets. I wanted to give them out for questions. So whoever asked the question or talked, so this guy, who else did? I think someone else did, but you guys come up, get first dibs, and then everyone else can just get at it. Or maybe Rhonda can give it out for good questions and stuff throughout. Yeah, and there's cheat sheets, which are really useful, and you guys can come up and get them. So thanks, guys. Really appreciate you guys letting me do this. Yeah, let me know.